What's up, everybody? Welcome to a special episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. This is our prediction special. I'm going to be revealing to you guys my record prediction for all the SEC teams, along with my conference standing predictions, and I will be giving you guys my pick for the two teams that I have making it to the SEC championship game and who's going to end up walking away with the SEC crown at the end of the season. Quick disclaimer, join our Discord. We recently set it up a few days ago. If you wake up around 2, 3 o'clock at night and you can't go back to sleep and you just have the urge to talk football, rather it be college football or the NFL, you can yap your heart away in our Discord server. Make sure that you join. Link is down in the description below. I would love to talk ball with you guys a lot more. Secondly, I know you guys are going to ask, no, I'm not doing these predictions for any other conference this year. I'm sorry, but the majority of my subscribers are comprised of mainly SEC fans. So I have to give my audience what they want, and you guys eat up the SEC content. So this year we're just doing SEC rec predictions. Next year I'll do them for every single conference. And I apologize for putting this out so late. Week 0 is only 2 days away from kicking off, but you know what they say, better late than never. And I wanted to take my time putting these out because I don't want nobody in the comment section to claim, oh, you ain't doing no research. You don't know what you're talking about. But it's not going to matter anyway because you guys are still going to say I didn't do my research if I give your team a record that you disagree with. But if you disagree with any of my predictions, drop your SEC predictions in the comment section down below so we can have some healthy discourse. I don't want anybody just saying, you're an idiot, you're stupid. If you disagree with my predictions, let me know what your predictions are. If you're so much smarter than me and you can do so much better than what I can at this, I would love to see your right predictions in the comment section. So without further ado, let's get into this thing. I have Arkansas finishing in last place in the SEC, 3-9 overall, 0-8 in conference play. I don't think Sam Pittman is going to be able to delay the inevitable any longer. Last season, he was able to overachieve and survive. This year, Arkansas is the Bobby Petrino and Taylor Green show. That's about it. They have concerns everywhere else. They have a 30-year-old playing wide receiver for them. If you have a 30-year-old wide receiver on your team, it's hard for me to take you seriously. Arkansas, they have holes on defense, the defensive line. That's concern. The offensive line is a concern, which is surprising considering that Sam Pittman is an offensive line coach. It's just hard to see Arkansas having a lot of success this year. I know they were supposed to be as bad as what I'm predicting them to be this year in 2024, but I don't think it's a matter of if, it's a matter of when Sam Pittman gets fired and replaced for John Gruden. I don't know why Arkansas isn't much better than what they are. They do have a pretty good NIL collective. They were able to lure John Calipari away from Kentucky, so I don't understand why the football team just seems to not be better than what it is. Next up, we have Mississippi State and Kentucky both finishing 4-8, 1-7 in SEC play. Jeff Lebby, I still think he needs one more year to get the ball rolling down there in Starksville, Mississippi. They do get Blake Shapen back at quarterback. He looked pretty solid before his season-ending injury, and Mississippi State should be a lot more explosive on offense. They do have a lot of depth at receiver. We don't know how the offensive line and the rest of the defense is going to look, but offensively, they should be pretty good. Maybe they end up exceeding expectations, pulling off a few upsets because they can actually win shootouts this year. Kentucky, man, the NIL era has just killed this football program. Before the NIL era, if I told you that we were going to have a 12-team playoff, probably you would have thought to yourself, okay, maybe Kentucky could get in as a 12th or 11th seed. And that's what I was thinking when the playoffs got expanded. That would open the door for Kentucky to really start cementing their football program as a national brand, just like their basketball program. But unfortunately, Mark Stoops hasn't been able to sustain the level of success post-NIL era that he was able to have pre-NIL era. He lost his best assistant, which was responsible for Kentucky bringing in some of the highest-rated recruits ever. Their season this year comes down to the quarterback play of Zach Calzada. If you remember him, he was the quarterback who led Texas A&M to that upset over Alabama a few years ago. Now, I know that seems like it was years ago, but he balled out at Incarnate Ward the other year. So him coming back to the SEC, you should have more proven quarterback play, but I don't know how good the receiver's going to be. We keep saying that the offensive line is going to be good, but we've been saying that about Kentucky for the past 2 years, and the offensive line still has struggled. Defensively, they could be pretty good, but it's just tough sledding for the Wildcats right now, and maybe they end up giving Mark Stoops the boot at the end of the season. Missouri is coming back down to earth. They've had a good flash in the bottle the past 2 years when they've won 10 games in consecutive seasons, but I think they go 6-6. They finished 2-6 in conference play this year. They got a solid team, but they do have to replace a few starters on the offensive line. The defense is good. My main issue with Missouri is their quarterback play. I thought Drew Perbula, along with most, he was going to run away with this quarterback competition, but apparently Eli Drinkwitz is still undecided with who his starting quarterback is going to be this season. So they're going to be having a two-headed rotation at quarterback. And you know what they say, if you got two quarterbacks, then you don't got one at all. And Missouri was incredibly overrated last year. They went 1-3 against ranked opponents. The only ranked team that they beat in 2024 was Boston College. So I think they're poised for a down season. I still like Eli Drinkwitz. I still like the direction that program's heading in, but they don't recruit at an incredibly high level compared to the LSUs, the Bamas, the Georgias of the world. The transfer portal, they do a pretty good job evaluating, getting talent from there, but I think with the uncertainty that they have at quarterback and their schedule being a little bit more difficult, with how they looked last year against good teams, I think they fall back down to earth just a little bit, and they finish 6-6, 2-6 in SEC play. I have Ole Miss, like Missouri, coming back down to earth just a little bit. This past 4-year stretch of Ole Miss has been the best stretch that this program has ever had when it comes to football. 3 out of the last 4 seasons that Lane Kiffin has been here, he's won at least 10 games. They replace a lot of talented players from last year's squad. Jackson Dart's gone. Not really worried about that. Austin Simmons should be able to fill in perfectly. They do have talent at running back and receiver, but the offensive line was bad last year. Jackson Dart was able to overcome that with a younger quarterback in Austin Simmons, though. I think the offensive line can hold back this offense's production just a little bit. And defensively, I feel that they are really going to regress in this area. I'm not a big fan of Pete Golden at all, but his defense was good last year, mainly because they had the freakiest defense in college football. Princely, Emmanuel, and Walter Nolan, they're now in the NFL. So you're going to have a hard time replacing the kind of caliber of athletes that those guys were on the defensive line. You also lose Trey Amos as well to the league, who was one of the better cornerbacks in the SEC. Ole Miss, they bring in another good transfer portal class, but it's hard to continue to live off the transfer portal. Eventually, you're going to have a few seasons when you're not able to hit on the transfer portal like how you did last year. So I got them going 7-5, 3-5 in SEC play. Tennessee, they're going to regress just like Ole Miss and Missouri. They don't have issues at quarterback. at least to me, I believe that Joey Aguilar will be an upgrade from Nico Iamaleava. Nico was overrated. Prior to that Vanderbilt game, he only had 2 touchdowns against SEC opponents. He was not good. Tennessee was Dylan Sampson and great defense. That's all they were last season. This year, you replace 3 of your most productive receivers from last year. You lose 4 out of 5 of your starting offensive linemen. You have to replace the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, who, by the way, had pretty much the greatest season ever for your program at running back. Defensively, you should be good on the defensive line, but I'm concerned about your lack of depth at corner. Your All-American corner, Jamal McCoy, he suffered an ACL injury back in January. It's up in the air when he's going to be able to return this season, if he even returns at all. Maybe he just mails it in and prepares for the draft. I can see Tennessee coming back down to earth with Ole Miss and Mizzou finishing 7-5, 3-5 in SEC play. They do have a tough schedule. They were able to get one on Alabama this year. I think that they lose to Bama, they lose to Georgia, they lose to Florida. I just think that Kentucky takes a little bit of a step backwards this season with everything that they have to replace. Vanderbilt, surprise, surprise, I don't have the Commodores going backwards. I have them finishing 7-5. They do retain a lot of their talent from last year. On defense, they have a lot of experience on that side of the ball, and they got better with a few of their transfer portal pickups on that side of the ball. Diego Pavia, you keep him around. I feel like Clark Lee has this Vandy program trending upwards. I don't believe that last year was a fluke. Vanderbilt was as competitive as what they've ever been in over the last decade. They haven't been as competitive as what they were in 2024 since James Franklin was their head coach a decade ago. And even with the win over Alabama, they had a really good game against Texas. You know, Vanderbilt just wasn't getting blown out like how they normally have been in years past. This is a Vanderbilt program that it looks like they finally have figured out what it takes to win in the SEC, albeit it's in their own way because they don't have the resources or the ability to win like some of the top dogs in this conference. But I don't see Vanderbilt falling off too much, man. I think that we can see the Commodores get the 7 wins this season. Auburn is probably the biggest surprise, the biggest wild card team in the SEC this year. They can go either way. I don't think there's a single team in the SEC that has a lower floor but also has a super high ceiling as what Auburn does this year. I'm going to go in the middle. I'm going to say they win 8 games and they finish at 500 in conference play this year. They're going to be throwing out 3 quarterbacks this season. At least that's what the plan could be if Jackson Arnold doesn't pan out. But I trust Hugh Freeze. I don't think Hugh Freeze is a bad head coach. People forget how bad of a shape Auburn football was in when Hugh Freeze got this job. Brian Harson's, his poor recruiting set this program back years. So it was going to take a while for Hugh Freeze to rebuild this program. I feel in year 3 now, with the talent that he has at every other position, if the quarterback play is good, Auburn is going to be a quality team this year. If the quarterback play is great, and Jackson Arnold can live up to the expectations that he had when he was the Gatorade Player of the Year coming out of high school, then Auburn could be a surprise dark horse playoff contender this year. Don't sleep on Auburn. Auburn is always one of those teams that they shock you when you least expect them to be good. Texas A&M, like Auburn, I have them finishing 8-4, 500 in conference play. I'm not saying I don't buy the Texas A&M hype. I'm just holding off on buying the stock of Texas A&M being a playoff team. I'm going to buy my A&M stock next year. I still believe that they are a year away. I don't know how improved that defense is going to be. Marcel Reed, he was really good until the final few games of the season when he kind of came back down to earth a little bit. I don't know if that A&M offense is going to roll like how the media thinks they will. I still think they're around that 7 to 8 win range. Now, I could be wrong. They do have an incredibly high upside, and they definitely could be a playoff contender, but I more so think that 2026 is the year that Mike Elko and company start making noise in the conference, and they put themselves in that playoff discussion. They would have made it to the SEC championship last year if they were able to beat Texas. I think they're going to be a good team. They'll pull off a few big wins, but I just don't think they got enough juice to do it this year. Oklahoma, the Sooners. Can I get a Boomer Sooner in the comments if you made it this far, man? Oklahoma will be the most improved team in the SEC this year. That is one of my bold predictions for this season, this conference. Oklahoma is a borderline playoff team. We know that they're going to have a great defense. Brent Venables is taking back over the play calling. He also somehow managed to fix the biggest issues that kept Oklahoma from having a good welcome in the SEC. They had no offense. You can't win games in this conference trying to be Iowa. All defense, good special teams, but terrible offensive play, especially from the quarterback position. You get John Mateer. We already know he was the number 1 rated quarterback from this portal cycle. I don't think anything is going to come from the Venmo situation, even though I'll say my thoughts on the Venmo situation for another day. You got Jaden Nard. I mean, Oklahoma's loaded. How's that offensive line going to look? That's probably the biggest question, but I think the offensive line should look way better than what it did last year. Injuries and poor quarterback play just completely derailed Oklahoma. A lot of their issues, minus the offensive line, have been corrected. Yeah, they do have a tough schedule, but there were a few games that they should have won last year. They should have been able to beat Tennessee, but their offense just kept turning the football over nonstop. This year with better quarterback play, Oklahoma should easily be a 7-win team and position themselves to get into the playoffs as a 9-win squad. Now we're getting into the meat and potatoes, people. I got the Beamer Boys, South Carolina, finishing with 9 wins once again, 6-2 in conference play. I really get mad when I see ESPN's FPI, their Power Football Index, projecting the Beamer Boys regressing, finishing in the bottom half of this conference. Not I. I got the Beamer Boys finishing in the top half of the SEC this year. Of course, they do have to replace a lot on that defensive line, but a lot of those guys that they lost to the NFL had the production that they had, mainly due to Dylan Stewart getting tripled and quadrupled teams. The 18-year-old was commanding quadrupled teams. That tells you how much of a force Dylan Stewart is to be reckoned with. And you got Lenore Sellers. When you have 2 top 5 players, not just at their position, but in the sport as a whole, at positions that can completely take over games, it's hard to overlook South Carolina. They also have as talented as a receiving core as what they've had in recent memory. Their offensive line is going to be as good as ever. I mean, their offensive line has been abysmal since Shane Beamer first got this job. I think their offensive line will finally look good for a change. We know they're going to have a good ground game. I'm really high on South Carolina. I'm higher on the Gamecocks than I am most. I would not be surprised if we saw this team sneak into the playoffs. This was the hottest team during the second half of last season. I don't know what happened to Lenore Sellers, but after that Alabama game, something just flipped in his head and he just completely took over. LSU, I got them finishing 9-3. Now, a few months ago, I had them going 10-2, but I changed my mind. I have secondhand doubts about the Tigers. I got them going 9-3. My issue with LSU is just Brian Kelly, man. It's like I know that he can capitalize off the talent that he has, but can you beat Kalen DeBoer? Can you win some of the tougher games on your schedule? That's my question with LSU. I don't know if they can beat Clemson week 1. I just don't know. So does 9 wins get LSU into the playoffs this year? Possibly. But I just don't know about LSU, man. I really just don't know. I'm going to say 9 wins, but I wouldn't be shocked if they prove me wrong and they won 10 or 11. They do have one of the best rosters in America. With what they bring in from the portal, how well they recruited, I can definitely see them exceeding my predictions. But for now, I got them going 9-3. Georgia, I have them finishing 10-2. Last year should have been the year that Georgia had 3 losses, but somehow with the magic and the mystique of Kirby Smart, they were able to overcome all of the obstacles that they thrown their way on offense. You had a turnover machine in Carson Beck, offensive line play that was down compared to what we've grown accustomed to seeing out of Georgia in previous years. The run game was non-existent the majority of the year. The receivers couldn't catch a soul. They couldn't catch a fly. They couldn't catch a cold. They led college football in drops. Everything should bounce back to normal for the Dogs. I just don't see them winning the SEC this year because the teams I have above them, I just think, are slightly better than Georgia. But Georgia definitely will be in the playoffs. I just don't have them making it to the SEC championship game this year. I think that, we now are about to see the teams I have above them start to show that, Georgia now has competition now. For the last decade, it seems like Georgia and Alabama have been in the SEC championship game. I think that changes this year. Texas, I have them going 10-2 now. I thought that this was a perfect team a few weeks ago. I thought that they could run the table, go undefeated, but I got them losing to Oklahoma, Florida in conference play. Those are the only 2 losses I see them taking this year. The reason why I have them losing to Oklahoma, despite them having the talent advantage over Oklahoma, is that that's a rivalry game. Rivalry games are not always decided on talent. The last time Oklahoma had a capable quarterback, Texas lost that game. So now with John Mateer, with this being a rivalry game, you add John Mateer to it. Now you're going to have competent quarterback play. You should have a competent offense. I think Texas gets upset by Oklahoma, and they got to play Florida on the road in the swamp. Florida is going to be a tough out for anybody this season, especially when you got to play them in their home field. It's hard to get a win in the swamp. The humidity, the atmosphere is one of the best places to play in all of college football. Also, unfortunately, happens to be one of the toughest for Texas. So I think that they end up losing to Florida and they get upset by Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout. And finally, for my SEC championship game, I have Florida going 11-1, taking on Alabama for the SEC title. And I'm going with the Tide to win the conference this year. Roll Tide, baby. Roll Tide. Listen, I'm not about to sell any of my Kalen DeBoer stock. 3 years ago, Kalen DeBoer was paying my tuition with the amount of money that I was winning betting on Washington during his final season with Michael Penix, man. If you think that Kalen DeBoer is just about to let Alabama fall off, you're sadly mistaken. He won the most games that a first-year head coach ever won their first season with that program. That also happened to be the worst season of Kalen DeBoer's entire coaching career. So that tells you how good of a coach he actually is. And he was good against the great teams that Alabama had to play. He just played down, or his team played down to teams that they were expected to crush. This year, they want to smash ants with a sledgehammer, and they will do that. I'm taking the Tide to win the SEC. They have one of the most complete teams in all of college football. Great offense, great defense. There's uncertainty around Ty Simpson, but I think he'll be fine with the receivers that he's throwing to. I don't think he can be any worse than what Jalen Milroe was. And I'm not trying to put all of Alabama's struggles last season on Jalen Milroe. I know one of my guys that messes with the content heavy is going to get triggered by hearing any blame placed on Jalen Milroe, but let's not act like Jalen Milroe wasn't somewhat responsible, at least 70% responsible for Alabama playing the way they did in some of those upset losses. But I'm taking the Tide to win the SEC this year, and Kalen DeBoer is about to prove to everybody why he was the only right coach to replace Nick Saban down there in Tuscaloosa. So these are my SEC record and standing predictions for the 2025 college football season. Leave your rec predictions and your conference standing predictions in the comments below. If you disagree, I want to hear your analysis. I want to hear your opinion about your rec predictions so we can compare them and we can have some healthy discourse. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys shortly with another episode.